Okay, we're live. We are live. Double podcast today. Super excited. Streak continues. We have a special guest today, but first, don't forget, please rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us grow the channel, as well as when you leave the comments in the description or anything that you need from there. Also, check out our apparel. We've got awesome shirts like Strike Out Everyone. Cass is wearing weird. We got our hats. We got great stuff going on. But without further ado, the owner and founder of 108 Performance, Eugene Bleecker, our man right here. Eugene, welcome to the show. I appreciate you taking a little time out of your day.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
You and I have a little bit of a history. We did some flush band work, and we've been communicating back and forth for years now on things, and we've kind of followed each other's stuff. Why don't you tell everybody just a quick synopsis of 108 Performance, what is it, and for anybody that may not know about it down here in San Diego.
Yeah, for sure. So I opened up 108 at the end of 2014. I had already been coaching for years at different facilities, helped open one, was running all the baseball operations at another large multi-sport facility for a couple of years, doing teams, classes, lessons, all that stuff. And then in 14, wanted to, I felt like I was into some interesting things on the hitting and pitching side and wanted to take all of the time that I was spending on the field, which I miss very much, but I felt like if I could take all that time and devote it to, just understanding and developing the hitting and the pitching principles better, that was kind of the direction that I wanted to go. So opened up 108 in Riverside, California, and just kind of one thing led to another, man. Went from one shop with, 60 guys to, 100 with a wait list of 200 in 2 years, and then opened up the second shop in Orange County in 17. And, rest is history.
That's awesome. So you run a different kind of facility too, where it's kind of, you have to qualify and you have limited space. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So, that was an important thing for me, from a culture building standpoint and from a player development standpoint. Baseball facilities tend to fall into that trap of, going too large too fast. And I'd seen that and been a part of that. And I didn't want to cater to, kids who wanted a, 1 month tune-up before the season. I wanted guys who really wanted to get, their hands dirty and come in and train all the time and create an environment for them to do that. And, the environment and the culture is really important. And if you have half the guys that want to be there and the other half that don't, it's not conducive to the optimal training environment. So by focusing on bringing guys in that really wanted to get after it, wanted to train, providing memberships so they could come in all the time, that was a huge piece of it, and gave us more time to work with them and get actionable results. I mean, the reality is that learning how to hitting and pitching are a skill, right? And they're a very difficult skill to master. Okay, and it's kind of like playing an instrument. And I'm doing a little study on myself during COVID. I decided I wanted to learn how to play the piano. And it's something that I've always kind of been interested in. And, I think athletes are always fascinated by musicians and vice versa. And, in my sitting here and trying to learn to play, especially since I can't do anything with my left hand at all, and I'm not musical, it's interesting, right? Like you have to, and I'm using an app. It's called Musician. It's really cool. It's like Guitar Hero, but for real music. And as I'm learning how to play, it's like you start with one hand and you're learning how to play real slow and you got to slow it down. And then you learn how to play with the other hand and then they speed it up. And then you start to incorporate both hands. But it's really tough and it's very complex. And it's this constant, like, you get from 0 to 5 in a day, and then the next day when you start, you're not starting at 5. You're back down to like 1 or 2, but you've made progress. You're starting better than you started the day previous. And as you're continuing to learn it, right, like there are days where it's good and you're starting closer to where you finished the day before, and then you take a couple days off, and now you're starting almost, it feels like it's square one at the beginning of the day. And, this is just my brain controlling my hands. It's not my brain controlling my entire body through a dynamic movement and trying to throw a ball 95 and dot up on a corner, or trying to hit a ball, 450 feet. And, because baseball is such a, skilled sport, it's even more important for guys to understand the replication that's necessary for that skill. There's a lot of talk in skill acquisition now about variability. And I love variability and I use it in training, but think about it like this, okay? There's this, I like to study other things and I love philosophy. And the ancient Greeks were the masters. And there's this theory called the law of the one and the many. And it goes back to Plato, Aristotle. And basically what it means is, think about it like this. If you were going to draw 5 circles, okay, science tells us that none of them will ever be identical no matter what you do, and none of them will be perfect circles, okay? That represents the many, okay? The many is comprised of the one, right? But the one is almost more real than the many. The one is the one that really exists, but it's abstract. It exists in your mind, not in reality. It's your understanding of, what a circle is based on the laws of the physical universe. You walk around every day, you see the sun, moon, tires, wheels, things that are circular. So in your mind, you have this mental model of what the circle is, okay? And your drawings are your representations of that circle, okay? If you wanted to be an artist, okay, you don't just say, fuck it, drawing a perfect circle is impossible, so I'm not going to try, right? You learn how to draw it slow. You learn how to draw it fast. You learn how to draw it standing on one leg. You speed it up. You slow it down. You change implements to draw the circle. You use different, draw circles of different size. You stand on a boat and rock around and try not to allow the environment to screw up your ability to draw that perfect circle. And even though you'll never do it, the best artists, right, the guys who are going to paint corners, they get within the most narrow bandwidth more than everyone else, okay? They're able to replicate and draw that perfect circle better than everyone else. So, when it comes to training, once a week lessons, it's not, that doesn't do it. And I just never wanted to be a part of that, and I never wanted to do that again. So, the environment for the shop was one that, guys come in all the time, get after it, and really focus on the development. And I was fortunate enough about 5 years ago, as we got into this thing and started to get real heavy in it, to partner with the biomechanics lab here in Orange County and start to, test things and really try to understand them. Because early on, I was parroting and quoting all the studies and the research and ASMI and all these different things. And then, I was watching Kyle up at Driveline in, 2012, 2013, he's starting to talk about doing research on your own. And then I'm like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Like, before I thought I knew everything and because I'd been in baseball my whole life. And then I realized, oh my God, I don't know shit, back in 2010. And, oh my God, nobody swings down. Oh my God, everybody swings up. Oh my God, they're hitting the ball far. Bernstein's principle. I must have to try to throw and hit the ball harder. So all this new stuff people are doing, I was all in on that back in 2010, but had the opportunity to do it with, 175 players and a lot of different movement profiles and, really kind of see what was working and what wasn't working. And then when I partnered with the biomechanics lab and opened up 108, it was time to see, okay, like, if I thought I knew everything before, right, and I was wrong, what about now? Let's redo this whole thing. Let's rethink everything. Why could the old school have been right? Right. So starting to dig into all those things and digging into movement principles. And, the deeper you dig, the more you find out everything that all those, old dudes ever said, none of it was wrong. It's just about how people interpret information, and coaches had a very small toolbox. I mean, that was it. They just had words like, swing down, right? And that word can impact somebody really positively, but it can also impact somebody really negatively. In fact, one of the funny things I'm doing right now, so the other day, I have twin 8-year-olds, and they'll be 9 in a few weeks. And they both play softball now. They played a couple years of baseball first, and I've never told them anything but, swing as hard as you can, throw as hard as you can, right? And the interesting thing, when you watch little kids and you tell them to swing harder or throw harder, they move better and better the harder they try. But that's also because they don't have muscles to compensate within the movements. They're using the entire system symmetrically and evenly based on tension and based on length tension. And that's how they're able to produce their force. And that's why you see young players that have no muscle, or they're smaller and they can throw real hard or hit the ball real far. They're using that tension system properly, okay? So what I wanted to try with my kids is took them out to the park, and they've never heard any of those cues. And they've never had any of those, all the different, we've used some implements before, but I thought it'd be interesting to take them out and say, okay, I want you both to swing down. Show me your best swing. Now swing down. Now swing up. Now get your hands back. Now show me a leg kick. Now throw as hard as you can. Okay, now throw over the top. Now finish the pitch and video and watch the differences in how they were interpreting the movements, because you're looking at twins. You're looking at same genetic makeup, same everything. So how different can two human beings that have never been told those things before, right? How different can they move as a result of all those different words, cues, drills, implements? And one of the tweets that we're going to put out this week, I told them both to swing up, and we're going to put a poll out and show each one of them individually and say, which cue do you think we gave them? And for one of my daughters, everyone's going to say swing down. And for the other daughter, everyone's going to say swing up, but they were both told to swing up. They were both told to swing up. And like Mackenzie was the most down it ever is, even though she was thinking up, right? So there's a lot of interesting stuff in coaching, man. There's a lot of paradoxical things, think one thing to do the other. And that's where the infinite complexity comes in with the individuals. But the more and more we've dug, this whole thing is way more simple than people are making it. And it can be that simple. You just have to understand like the basic foundational principles of human movement. So.
Wow, getting us fired up in the first 10 minutes of the podcast. That was awesome, Eugene. Lot to unpack there. Your method of investigation is rather interesting too. Looking at how far you've come. You've been doing it since 2012. I've been following your stuff for a long time and seeing your stuff. I know Cass has been following too. Where do you feel like you're going right now with all of these ideas? Is there I know you just released the book, and what's your feel right now?
Well, released the book last year, sat down at the end of the pro off season to write it, got it out by June. But during that time, we were also working on developing educational courses and a player development website that kind of giving people what we believe, why we believe it, how we assess it, and then in the website giving them the how to train it, right? And that was conceptually something I was working on for the last 3 years, but really started actionably working on it at the end of last off season. And we released our courses in December, and released the website membership in March. And it's been really good, man. We have a lot of big league organizations and really good collegiate programs, getting them, and we're getting a lot of amazing feedback on the results people are getting with it. So it's exciting, man. Enjoying it very much. And as far as where we're going, just continuing to try to push the envelope and move the game forward. And one of the things that we really wanted to focus on this year was shrinking locally to grow the message. Think of it like this, like rather than being a couple of baseball training facilities that happens to do education, a baseball education company that trains players. So doing the best job we can of training the athletes we have and capturing all of the things we're doing with them that are either working, not working, and then sharing those things through our educational platform. So, we have 2 more certification courses that we're currently developing. I actually just got off a a Zoom call with our DPT and biomechanist on the biomechanics course, reviewing that we'll have out hopefully by the summertime. So.
Wow, that's impressive. There's a lot of programs you can access it from, the internet. You can see where it's going from there. You can go into the facility. One of the things that I liked about your variability idea and some of the stuff that I've seen in the gym is you guys play with balance a lot and different things, whether it's like, throwing on BOSU balls or other, other devices and stuff like that. Could you go into some of the detail with what the focus is behind that?
For sure. Put it like this. Coaches have always talked about the importance of balance, but it wasn't sexy, right? Because it was just a word. But when you really understand the word and what it means and what's behind it, it's the sexiest thing ever, right? Like, you can't fire a cannon from a canoe unless you anchor that bitch down from both ends, okay? Our legs are the ropes, our feet are the anchors, our pelvis is the boat, and our trunk is the cannon, okay? So we have to get to a good, stable landing position, right? And anchor those things down so when we do rotate, we can rotate effectively, efficiently, and with tension. Does that make sense? So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So you have to be able to provide the tension down low to anchor in so you can rotate up top. It's almost like think about how joints work, mobile, stable, right? The lower half has to provide the stability so the upper half can rotate. And the faster you can stabilize and the more tension you can produce anchoring in and resisting rotation, the better you can rotate up top. And that's it's a really important concept because one of the most important things that people are missing right now is what actually happens in elites. And, that's a high rate of force development. Elites close the gaps of separation faster than everyone else. They get the energy to transfer faster than everybody else. And that's where the magic is, And people have been focusing on things like separation, but degrees of separation are not important. They're different based on individuals. It's not about the degree of separation. It's about how quickly you can close the gaps of separation. That's rate of force development. And that's the biggest, one of the biggest pieces of the...
I know exactly what you mean by that. Just can you say that another way or just say it again? Because that's so spot on.
So currently, and it comes from a lack of understanding of good biomechanics. I had a Zoom call the other day that I did, and it was 40 of the brightest minds in the game, and I mean we had Brian DeLunas, Pete Woodworth, Randy Sullivan, Lance Wheeler. Just a ton of Greg Rose, just a ton of really, really bright people on the call. And I had this revelation the other day on why people are misinterpreting this whole hip shoulder separation thing. So when you look at golf, okay, good golfers, right? Greg Rose talks about this, average 45 degrees of counter rotation, right? Prior to the downswing. And then the pelvis goes, and it goes to 50 degrees, but that's it, which means that all of the hip shoulder separation that guy got, 45 fucking degrees of it was already done in the load. Only 5 degrees was added in the forward move. 5, okay? If we took a laser pointer and we looked at what fucking 5 degrees was, that ain't a lot, okay? The 5 degrees of added separation is stretch reflex. Okay, that cannot be tested passively. That cannot be trained passively. That can only be trained through rate of force development, those extra degrees. People think by changing the angles of their pelvis and their shoulders and their bones, manipulating the positions, they can get hip shoulder separation, but that is not good hip shoulder separation. Okay, good hip shoulder separation is after landing in a loaded position, decelling like a mother, right? Getting the stretch reflex to transfer and close the gaps of separation to the upper, okay? So the misinterpretation around that in the baseball community has been enormous, absolutely enormous. And I was guilty of it early on as well. Okay. So
if you're not guilty of it, you haven't been doing this long enough.
That's
right?
correct.
Like,
that's correct. That's correct. Because if you're following the research and you were listening to them talk about hip shoulder separation, that's exactly what
80%.
I was doing that shit back in 2010 because of Tom House and all that stuff. Right. So, like it's just misunderstood. Right. And people are too caught up looking at individual and divisible pieces like bones, but they're not paying attention to the system. Like the bones are providing stability, so are the muscles. The rest of the surrounding and supporting structure, that ECM system and fascia, that's what's doing the heavy lifting, right? When you're moving really well. Okay, so the closing the gaps of separation is the money. That's the when you decel wall with the lower half, when you have somebody that comes in, you do an assessment and they lack hip shoulder separation. They're turning the wrong pieces of their body on, right, at the wrong time. So there's too much stiffness too early, right? Elites are able to turn pieces off better than everybody else too. So as they move down the mound, it's passive, it's easy, right? It's effortless. And then when it's time to rotate, they're grabbing the ground like a bastard, and the rotational rate of force development up top is like rotation finish, slingshot, rotation finish, slingshot, and then the arm can really whip through and get delivered. So, the biomechanists say, "Oh, hip shoulder separation," but they don't know how to create it. You create it,
and just for anybody that is unfamiliar with it, because I had kids for 3 years at D3 that I coached, and I had one of my best players say, "I still don't understand hip and shoulder separation." But so for visually, I think of the Dak Prescott. Right?
Awful.
Like that's not it.
Not only is that not it, right? Not only is that not it, right? And that got so much play when that went out. But so I just got off the phone, like I was saying, with our DPT bio, Dr. Fareed, and her business, Movement First, just had a record-setting year for NFL draft picks. Okay, and they have been giving data. They were just collecting all the data and giving it out to a whole bunch of these particular quarterbacks that work with a particular program that focuses on hip shoulder separation. And a bunch of them were having pain and underperforming. And after a while of collecting data and providing no feedback, because that's what she was asked of, she finally, when there was pain, explained to those guys, listen, okay, you are separating too far passively too much. You need to close the gaps and decrease the hip shoulder separation. And as soon as they did, pain went away, performance went up, right? As soon as they stopped doing all that bullshit.
I'm down. I get it. It's definitely a rabbit hole that we've been down, and we've looked at it. And when we saw the Dak Prescott thing, it was just, I saw the play. I go, that ball is going so far into the stands, it's not even funny.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pure duck. That's the pure duck going all the way that way.
Mm-hmm.
We see it.
I'll say this. I just want to. This is the only time you're going to hear this in this conversation. This is why I am such a big believer in educating, little league level, coaches, parents, players. This is not about the movement, guys. Because for you to understand the movement, you have to be psycho with mustaches that curl and weird things that, you know what I mean? Because that's us, right? And so the people that are not willing to go this step, treat people nice, get kids to have fun, create an environment where they're going to be turning things off accidentally, because that's what kids do when they're put in the right environment, right? So it's that actually, that's another way of saying the old school. It's not that they didn't know what they're talking about. Right. It just, yeah. So anyway,
here's something funny. You want to hear something funny? So when I was doing that thing with my kids the other day, I have video of this because we interviewed them. Okay. And after we went over all the cues, we asked them, okay, so which did you like any of it? What did you like the best? What did you like the least? Both of them were I didn't like squash the bug. It felt weird. And I felt like I had no power. right? So as soon as they turned their pelvis, right, they felt like shit. And that was all from them. There was nothing, that was like, there was no coaching that into them. It was just asking them like, so what are your thoughts? Which is really funny. The best thing people can do for their kids is leave them the fuck alone and give them heavy bats and different kind of balls to throw, and just tell them to swing and throw hard. And then when they start to get that pubescent age, when muscles start to hit, like that's when you need to start that other stuff. And that doesn't mean that like you can't do really good work with young kids and give really good drills and really smart. But the most important thing early on is getting them to have fun, love the game. And that's something that we're failing at tremendously in the game of baseball. The more games they play, the more, like they should be doing throwing competitions, hitting targets, moving targets, throwing different balls to hit those targets, doing hitting competitions for distance, trying to hit targets using different implements. Like, give them a prize if they win. Whoever hits it the farthest wins a prize. Like, make them have fun and make them enjoy the game and love it first. And then, later they'll want to work at it, and they'll want to improve it. But the closest thing biomechanically to elite big leaguers that we see is uncoached 10U kids that, are athletic.
Yeah, man. And it just allows so many things that cannot happen. It's just this replacement of free play, right? We have to create free play. Like it's a different world. So anyway, yeah, I don't know where else to go. I don't want to sit in that too much because I want you to keep on geeking out and telling the people what you've been up to, and yeah, man, where 108's going.
Mm-hmm.
John, what?
I was going to say, I thought I heard something about D-cell patterns. I'm interested to hear what research you found about that.
Research we found or research we've done?
Both. How about both? Like, because we're very into D-cell patterns too. So
okay.
It's one of our biggest things.
So for us, it started with the kickback, right? It started with seeing the kickback in hitters about 4 years ago, and being like, okay, what the fuck is that? Like, and then like starting to dig in and seeing, oh shit, like I've never seen that before. Wait, it's everywhere. Babe Ruth did it, Ernie Banks did it, Pete Rose did it. Like shit. So then testing it and seeing guys' exit velocities go up exponentially and they're hitting in games, and then going into the lab and understanding reciprocal movement and how that works. That the two biggest things any coach can research to understand are reciprocal movement and like understanding rate of force development and the fascia. Like that's the key, right? And after we started and did research on the kickback stuff, it turned into upper half trunk D-cell moves and understanding that better. Think about it like this, okay? From the time we're born, right? Like, because the most efficient movement is always the best movement. And in hitting and pitching, we have a small window of time and space to produce a large amount of force, right? So efficiency is key. We have to move as fast as possible in the smallest window possible of basically any other sport. So, like, when you look at it like that, and you look at it from an efficiency standpoint, from the time everyone's born, when they walk, no one has to teach you how to walk. You walk opposite arm, opposite leg, okay? Which means that the pelvis, when we walk, the pelvis is going one way, right? And the trunk is going the other way, because when my left leg goes forward, my right arm goes forward. So it's constant counter rotation, upper body one way, lower body the other. And when you look at any sport, any strike or release from bowling, hockey, soccer, it doesn't matter if it's upper body, it doesn't matter if it's lower body. If I'm trying to produce force from an extremity, okay, from my right leg, my left arm has to come across my body hard, okay, which is my trunk counter rotating against my right leg, okay? If I am going to bowl a bowling ball, right, when I bowl with my right arm, I can't bowl it well unless my right leg goes aggressively behind my body this way. And that pulling out of slack in opposite directions allows you to create force in small windows of time and space. That's pulling tension out evenly from both sides. So when you hit and when you throw, right, you need rate of force development. You have to close the gaps of that reciprocal movement as quickly as possible. So if I want to throw a punch with my right arm, the faster I can close the gap and get my right arm across my lower body, right, the harder I'm going to be able to throw that punch. Does that make sense? So hitting and pitching are no different. It's no different. We want to close those gaps of separation reciprocally as quickly as possible. That's why so many guys stride closed, right? There are so many elite pitchers throughout history, right? And now that stride closed, it's ridiculous. Then it gets taken away from them. And they did it naturally. And they did it naturally because that put them in a position to get across their lead hip and stabilize from the lead glute and give direction through rotation, you know? So to decel well, you have to put yourself in good positions of leverage first, right? So you can, you know, optimally use your body the way it needs to be used, you know, and then it's most of it's motor patterning. It's not strength.
Yeah, I've told I don't know, I feel like I might have said this in that live the other night, but I have told kids recently, like, I dare you to not open your front leg. Don't open it. And they can't, but the act of trying, I don't know that there's been a better cue for my front leg, because they gotta stop. You can't go through that, right? Like, you can go through an open front foot easy. So it's just really interesting. And, you know, and I said this before, but and I won't get into it, but
pitching at guys to stay closed and not fly open. How long have coaches been bitching at guys to stay closed and not fly open?
Well,
Get
and
your
it's just
front
like,
foot down early, keep your shoulders closed, like all of it.
Context though, right? You just need to go a little bit further, right? And because, well, this is the thing, is technology just exposed everybody that didn't have a good explanation. Well, I don't know why, but fucking do it. Like, and I totally get both sides, but shoot, anyway, I don't know what I was gonna ask because you got me all jacked up about, yeah. I was just gonna say that the Lada thing. So you know, that was, you know, Doug doesn't go into a lot of, you know, he's gonna say things differently than you. But when he just talks about a sideways, you know, just a forward move being 50-50 and that being just so simple, and then me going, oh, you know, pitchers aren't going to look exactly like that. They're doing something a little bit different, right? But the idea behind it and that being the foundation, and he was the first person that I heard that's like, oh, he's like, association, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then I'm like, man, maybe he's crazy, but maybe I am too. And it didn't take me very long to, you know, I feel like obviously you're a little bit farther along than we are on this, but goddamn, isn't it funny how you just you just pay attention for a little bit and how simple things do become. It's like, hey, your lower half, just go that way, and your upper half, just throw the damn ball. Like, it's not that hard. So I did like that you were talking simple. You want to go how you're simplifying things?
Yeah. So by focusing on, yeah, well, just by focusing on those two concepts of foundational movement, you know, like that simplifies all of it. Like if a guy doesn't have a scapula, okay, like there's a saying in physical therapy: if you're treating the site of the pain, you're in the wrong spot, right? You're doing the wrong thing. And it's the same thing in hitting and throwing. If a guy doesn't scap load, the reason that's happening most of the time is because he's got a shitty decel pattern down the chain. And a lot of times that's happening either because he's in a bad position, or he just doesn't have the motor patterning or the understanding of the motor patterning to be able to do it. So you don't focus on the scap load, you focus on the decel, you focus on getting good positions, you focus on getting across the body, you focus on rate of force development, you focus on those things. A lot of other stuff starts to clean up, man. Your path improves, your direction improves, your velocity improves, your command improves. Like, you focus on those things first, and then the other things become more of a byproduct. And then you can problem solve all the little things that haven't cleaned up as a result, and really figure out kind of why those things aren't happening, you know? So by focusing on the big rocks first, like I was talking about individuality in this thing, you know, back in 13, 14, and like was huge on that. And everybody, I think the mistake people made, everybody was looking for what does everybody do the same. But I had to focus on the individuality to get back to what everybody does the same. There are certain things about human beings that, like, even though we have different movement profiles, different length of levers, different degrees of strength, we're all made up of roughly the same bones and the same muscles. All of our internal body temperature, no matter where we are in the country, is roughly 98.6 at homeostasis. And everybody fucking walks opposite arm, opposite leg at the same time, okay? Even fucking left-handed pitchers. So if they do it, then everyone's capable of it. And as a result, like, understanding that reciprocal movement foundation, and then understanding that, like, you know, look, man, muscles are cool, but they're also slow, right? And the biotensegrity system and the fascia and the ECM, that's what's producing the real rate of force development and stretch reflex. So, you know, those two core foundational principles, and then everything else working off of it, has really been, you know, I think the big home run.
I love how you said that. Okay, could you say it one more time? The fascial tension force. I messed it up, but that just the idea of that made sense again.
Yeah, so the surrounding and supporting structure to the human body, the only thing that surrounds, supports, and envelops everything is the fascial system, right? It's kind of like the outside covering of a soccer ball, and it's made out of, think about if that was made out of rubber bands or a trampoline cover, okay? In tensegrity models or tensegrity systems, the outside, that surrounding, supporting structure, that's where the force comes from. So, like, you know, if you kick a soccer ball, okay, and you want it to, say, make the soccer ball harder or kick it far, if you fill it up with more air, right, there's more tension. And because there's more tension, you're going to be able to kick it farther more easily by really indenting, right? That stretch reflex is going to be greater. So everybody is born with a very even tensegrity system, right? And that's why little kids operate with efficiency when you tell them to throw hard. They have to use that tension. There's no muscles to compensate, okay? When you start layering in muscle, that's kind of like if you press on the soccer ball from the outside hard, like the stress is going to get dispersed very evenly. Everything is very evenly distributed. But now if you start to make the wall on one side or one piece really, really thick, right? Now the stress will no longer be evenly distributed, okay? And you're going to break on the opposite side of where the really strong part is, right? So the more evenly you use that whole system, and the more evenly you build that system, and the more you use that tension, right? I mean, shit, man, tension holds the planets together, right? Like tensile strength is where it's at. That makes sense? Kind of.
Yeah, that does.
I always find myself giving, like, I grew up on a lake. It's like, I always think about the tubing stuff, like skiing, you know, the same exact thing. And then it's like learning how to articulate those things to kids. But I think that I've done a lot of thinking about just like when things are appropriate and knowing that younger kids are going to handle speed better for other reasons. But I didn't even think about it from like, they literally can't, you know, like they don't have other options.
Tell them to swing harder. They're going to anchor in more. They're going to rotate less.
Right. And then I'm thinking about the, you know, some of the arm actions that you see, they're like, how could that ever exist? It's like, well, speed was never introduced to them at a young age, because this would have never been an option they chose, you know?
Yeah, it's not just the speed thing, though. Part of that is that the shoulder is the most mobile joint in the human body. And, you know, Bernstein's degrees of freedom, man. Like, your body can move a whole bunch of different ways, but it doesn't mean it fucking should, right? So you can manipulate your shoulder and you can tell a kid throw over the top, right? But things become a thing because everybody else does the opposite. Why does everyone say over the top? Because no little kids do. Why? Because it's fucking dumb. The way people interpret it is very poor, right? Force is plain specific. The humerus needs to work around a stable spine. The forearm needs to work around the humerus, okay? You need to rotate through an unwinding tornado. The forearm and the humerus should match the plane of rotation of the spine, and when little kids get told that shit, they put the arm above the plane of rotation of the spine, and then they create injuries and disconnections in pattern as a result.
I was going to, by the way, speaking of Pedro Strop, right? Like, think about that. And somebody just posted it, and I'm not sitting here like, this is such a hard conversation to have, because I'm not sitting here saying anybody who's ever coached him or his training is bad. It's simply that if you look at when the humerus gets way above the shoulder, like it does in that, there's only one option. It's going to come back down. And there are some simple things like this that I just think is interesting that people don't bring it to light. Because to your point, when does the humerus exist over the shoulder? Like, it won't unless it's get cued there. Does it? Right. So, yeah, it's hard. I understand this is a hard conversation to talk about specific people. It's just, and that's the hard part is how do you, this is such a touchy conversation, because you should be able to address this from the people who are authorities, right? And to have conversations that are productive about the best players in the game, it's really complicated, right? Because we can't also just be Pollyanna and be like, oh yeah, everybody does everything great, because that doesn't give the kids the sense there. So anyway, let's go away from specific people, but I don't know, man. What else have you been thinking about lately that's crazy? We've been talking a lot lately, so.
Well, that's crazy.
I don't know. We've just
I'm
been
interested
a lot
about.
Of
I have an idea, a question about. And what's your thought? We've never talked about this. What's your thought on live at bats? Like, what's your take on that? Where do you feel like?
What do you mean?
How would you evaluate it? You know what I mean? Like, I see you guys do live at bats inside your place. We try to do it whenever we can. Is that a staple? Is there a way you classify it? Do you have any specific plans of when you do it?
We classify it as having fun and competing and taking the things that we're working on and putting them into practice that's actionable. Some of it is crafted in as like seeing some hitters, and some of it is crafted in as live controlled. So we don't care about the result. We're focusing on not allowing the environment to change the patterning, right? So we're on that unstable boat, but we're fighting like hell to draw that perfect circle, right? So sometimes live at bats for pitchers or hitters are based on just competition, and sometimes they're based on like, okay, we don't care about the result. Let's just be as easy as we can, or let's stay as closed as long as we can, or let's work on that arm action. Let's let that play against a hitter in a situation where we don't have to be worried about the results. It adds in a variable that's more game-like that allows us to transition moves from, it's kind of like in skill development. Like your movement work is your foundation, that's your base. You're learning how to move differently in a different environment. Then you add in the ball, you add in the tee, right? You add in some catch. Then you add in toss or BP, and like you keep going up these levels of difficulty, right? And each one is closer and closer to what's happening in the game. So you're starting by learning how to draw your perfect circle slow, and then you keep continuing to challenge it in these more difficult environments with implements, thoughts, cues, goals, right? And making it more game-like. And as the pattern succeeds, you keep pushing it, and as it fails, you step it back.
Yeah. Go, John.
I was gonna say we call it testing, right? It's just like what you're saying, like testing, whether it's implementing the idea of a pitch, or like you're saying, staying closed, or a mantra, or whatever you're trying to become consistent at, and then trying to apply it, like you said, in game moves. I really like that. It's a difficult thing to do. The white line-itis thing is real. People don't always fully commit to what they're doing in their training because they're not quite sure if it's going to work or not.
I'm curious. I don't know that we've ever. I've listened to you quite a bit in the past, Eugene, and I don't know that you've ever gotten into this. We have tried to have conversations about how people pitch, and John has between the two of us, like, could we teach things and simplify pitching into just, are we still there?
Yeah, you were cut up just a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, and I think John and I were talking earlier today. It's like a lot of people want to have conversations about pitching based on count. You know, you see so many illustrations of how good, how hitters are way better in 2-0 counts and what pitches you should be seeing and what pitches, people have tendencies to throw. And I think a good, and I'm just curious how maybe you have this conversation the same or different, but we've talked about, let's teach 3 to 4 sequences: a fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, fast, slow, 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 fast, fast, and then a slow, fast, slow, fast. And we're just, it could be anything. You can make an argument for any 4 things, but with the idea of trying to create a different perspective on how people actually play the game of baseball, right? And that if you're actually executing those sequences, the count's going to be 0-2, 1-2, right? You're going to be striking people out, right? If you get good at the sequences. So I don't know. How do you have those conversations with your athletes? Is it similar, different?
Well, I would say, given that we're running out of time because I got to get to working on that presentation, I would leave it at this. Currently, in the entire United States, education right now sucks balls. Okay? The education system is fucking broken, and the sooner parents and people realize that, the better off they'll be. We're creating an entire system of robots that can only regurgitate and memorize, and there's no fucking creative thinkers anymore because we're not allowing them to think creatively. There's too many baseball players that don't understand how to play the game anymore because they're not allowed to fail and understand how to play the game. The pitches are being called for them at fucking 10 years old because people want to win games. The position players don't know how to read hitters anymore, or read pitchers, or understand where to position themselves because they're used to being told. And the pitchers don't know how to use any of their shit, right? Because they're not allowed to. So I would say providing players with an understanding of things that can screw hitters' timing up, but then allowing them to use their stuff and allowing them to fail and allowing them to understand that when I did this, this didn't work and I got fucking burned, right? So I'm not going to do that again. Why didn't that work? And then teaching them how to problem solve is probably the most important. We're in the worst. And I know generationally, people always say, oh, yeah, those fucking darn kids, we have these, generation gaps. No. Like, we're looking at something that we haven't seen in history before, that I'm aware of through any research I've done. Like, we're seeing the worst problem solvers in history. Like fucking kids, like they don't know how to solve problems. They don't know how to solve problems. All they do is fill their brains with information. They can't creatively think. I had a fucking kid ask me this the other day. We're doing a Zoom with like 5 of our pitchers. And, kid says we're at the end of it. And, guys are doing their weekly stuff and, going over the plans. And kid's like, coach. And this kid's going to fucking Long Beach State next year, right? Like he's he's 89, like he's a dude. And he's only like, 6 foot, 170 pounds, and has the capability to be 93, 94 all day. And fucking kids like this, he's like, so coach, and he's got his pen and his paper and he's all serious. And he's like, so like, should I be eating healthy right now or should I just be normal? And I'm sitting there like, what kind of fucking question is that? Like, how do you not have the capability to answer that question? So what does that mean? Should I be eating healthy or eating normal? Do you want to pitch professionally? Okay, yes. Do you want a spot at Long Beach next year and win a job? Yes, okay. Is your body the tool you're going to use to do that? Then don't be a fucking idiot. Of course you're supposed to eat well. What kind of dumbass question is that? What do you mean normal versus eating well? Well, we have a door at our shop, okay? And it's after you walk in the front door, you'd hang a left, go through 2 more sets of doors to get into the pitching room. And the second one, which leads to the pitching room, when you exit, there's 2 doorknobs on the door. One of them works. The other one doesn't have a correlating doorknob on the other side because it was taken out and it doesn't work. So initially when we moved in, we were going to take it out. And then one day, some fucking kid, it's his first day in the shop, he comes up to me in the hitting room. He's like, Coach, I'm locked in. How do I get out? And I was like, what do you mean you're locked in? Nobody locked the fucking doors. And he's like, no, I'm locked in. So we walk over, and I was like, hey, dummy, did you notice there are 2 fucking doorknobs? Did you try the other one? And then I opened it for him. And subsequently thereafter, over the next 3 years at that location, like the amount of fucking new kids that couldn't figure out how to open the fucking door was mind-blowing. I thought about setting up a hidden camera just to watch these assholes trying to figure out how to open the door. Like, it's 6 inches away. Try the other doorknob. Like, they have to go ask for the answers because they can't even figure out which doorknob to open. They're so busy getting indoctrinated into memorizing fucking books. Kids can't think anymore. Like, they have to learn how to think on their own. We need to give them like an understanding of what's what, but then let them like go try to do this and see what happens. Do whatever you want. Like, they have to be allowed to fail. They have to be allowed to fail.
Wow. What a great way to end it right there. That was a rant and a half. I love it. 2 doorknobs. Was he called Doorknob? Was that his nickname from then on, or what was his nickname?
Well, here's the problem. It wasn't just him. The amount of guys, like, it's literally unbelievable. I took the door. I'm bringing the doorknob to the next shop. When our lease was up March 31st, so we put it in storage till this COVID thing is over. But I'm putting 2 doorknobs and a hidden camera at the next shop. Like, that's a guarantee. Just so we can, like, funniest home videos and show the generational issues, like, real time.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, hopefully gets this warning on this podcast.
Hey, for the record, this has been, I mean, in a good way, it's hard to get Eugene on, so make sure you're following all of his stuff. He's all over everything. Okay, I basically, our plan today was, hey, get him on and let him talk nonstop, because this is all you're doing. You're educating everybody in the game. Who cares if anybody agrees or disagrees with anything that you say? You're pushing the game forward as well as anybody else. And so we love your stuff. So thank you very much. It's been an awesome honor to have you on. So we'll let you get going, man. I appreciate it though a lot.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys having me on. Definitely enjoyed it. Would love to do it again. And you know, people can agree with or disagree with whatever they want, but eventually they'll come around because everything that we're doing is not we don't believe in one way to hit. There's no one way to hit. There's no one way to throw. Like, what we believe in is foundational movement principles. And if people aren't on board with that shit now, just fucking wait. I was telling people about hip shoulder separation being bullshit for 3 years. Nobody wanted to listen. I've been bitching about all this stuff for a long time. People don't want to listen, but eventually they're going to see it and they're going to realize it and they're going to understand it. And they're going to realize that, like, regardless of who you're talking to and what thought, every drill works. Every thought works. Every cue works. Like, Doug Lotta's a great hitting instructor. Craig Wallenbrock's a great hitting instructor. There's a lot of great pitching instructors. Like, Randy Sullivan does a fantastic job. Lance Wheeler does an unbelievable job. Everybody has, you know, specialty things that they kind of are good at, or certain cues or nuances to their drills, or way to connect or communicate with people differently. All of that stuff is amazing. But every single time all of us talk, everyone is getting closer and closer to the same exact fucking thing. They're doing the same things, focusing on movement in the same ways differently from different parts of the country. All the people that are successful in baseball player development right now are focusing on movement quality, and certain pieces of that movement that are happening. And that's what we believe in. So anybody that disagrees with what we teach has no fucking idea what we teach.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I appreciate it again. We will definitely do this again. And if you ever need us to fill in on anything that you got in the future, definitely let us know. We'd love to jump in and hear what that conglomerate of amazing minds are like, right? So, well,
you guys are doing a killer job down there. Appreciate you having me on, and look forward to chatting again. And when we get the place back up and running again, love to have you guys come up and hang out and shoot the shit, talk shop.
Yeah, that sounds great. Definitely. Sounds good, man. Appreciate it again.
All right, boys.
Don't forget to go follow 108, Eugene, Cass. Appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.
Later on, boys.